You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Hello and welcome to V.A.C. Roundtable number 34. We are very welcome to be joined by our special guest, Chris Coulombe. He is a former officer running for a seat in California. And pardon me while I have a little bit of technical difficulty here. Let's see. We're basically currently our discussion is going to center around just a center of questions around cannabis and industry related as well as patient related. Chris, basically starting off with our first question, of the three cannabis bills currently circulating on the Hill, we wondered which of the three, the MORE Act, Mace's bill, and Schumer's bill, if any of these, do you support and why?
Thanks for the opportunity, and glad to be here. I'll dive in on the bills, but really none of these are a total solution at this point, though I believe that they are good starts. Some of them are good starts. Right now, the one that I think is probably most appropriate for a cannabis industry perspective is the MACE bill. That's the one that really, I think, in broad strokes, addresses some of the more important elements of it. Looking into some of the points in Schumer and also from Nadler's bill, there's a lot of things tucked in there down on the bottom, which I think many of the California operators can speak to from firsthand experience. One of them is the IRS having the ability to go in and adjust the tax rate based off of certain parameters, which are not yet disclosed, every 6 months. And we've seen that that problem rear its ugly head in California, where we're watching companies who are building their profit models and their operating models have to completely reconfigure the approach that they're taking to the market once there's a reevaluation of the tax rate. So that's why I would lean towards Mace's the most. There are still some shortcomings that I think need to be brought to a different place, but I think that she's doing the best work to really address the market and a broader approach to banking and to addressing some of the things inside of the veterans world. So that's why I would lean to hers.
Thank you very much. I'm a California operator myself, so
nice.
Keeping an eye on things is something that is specifically needed, as well as to see what actually transpires, because Schumer hasn't given me much faith, in watching the MORE Act continue to come up and die is only becoming a frustration, as most people are suffering from misinformation. They forget that it has to go through actually two houses, to be the House and the Senate, and then it gets signed, whereas unfortunately some of these bills are just going somewhere to die outright.
Yes.
I will turn this over then to question number 2 to Brian Buckley. Welcome, council member.
Thank you, and thank you, Chris, for joining us. It's really an excellent opportunity to speak with you.
My pleasure.
The question that we have is, what do you see as the opportunity with cannabis legalization, and what is your vision?
Well, I mean, this is really the heart of the conversation for cannabis operators, both, keeping things in a California-centric perspective but also on a national level. We're looking at major economic headwinds across the board for the United States. I think we're seeing small businesses largely, my kind of center of the universe is California. So we're watching a great deal of headwinds for small businesses, whether they be cannabis or not, because of a lot of the elements of the economy. And that, I think, is causing a major loss in our small business population. And my hope is that we can use a brand new sector like cannabis as one of the major elements to generate new economic activity, to develop advanced jobs, more manufacturing capabilities, use of more lands, and also on the research side. I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. The real vision that I believe, again, kind of speaking from a more California-centric perspective, but nonetheless a United States relevant statement, is that California and the United States can be a net exporter of cannabis. And we know that there is a worldwide demand for it. We know that people are willing to pay and to acknowledge the craft and the value. Again, California being one of those that's in worldwide demand now, despite all of the other issues. But what that demonstrates to me is that this is a product which has demand that can help stimulate, bring our economy to a new place and a new level without a whole lot of investment on the government side. So the vision would be the same exact thing that we have here where I live in Sonoma County, the wine country. International demand, major draw for commercial activity. And we can see that happen, and we can see that cannabis is cultivated and turned into various products. But we can see economic activity going into Oklahoma or even now Montana. But we can talk about some real economic activity generation that this United States could benefit from. And I hope it could be a first step into what I would consider to be the new economy of the United States. So, in broad strokes, that's the vision that I see. I know that there's going to be continued advancement through maybe the pharmaceutical world, how we're getting into the cannabinoids and how we can identify terpene expression and the elements of those aspects of the plant, and how that can also be used in medical research, addressing many of the ailments or the conditions or other components of life, as we should say. But there are a lot of things that I think we have yet to discover that this plant provides. And this step forward for federal legalization, access to true research, and the kind of commercial exploration of new applications of this plant really, I think, can open up a huge opportunity on an economic front that we are still yet to capitalize on.
That's great. And you definitely nailed the benefits. Do you see any dangers or do you have any concerns
with the use of the plant itself?
Yeah, you see use of the plant, or even with the terms of like the legalization of it, anything that might come to mind?
There's a plus and a minus to the lack of research that's been done. There's to be frank, there's not really been any actual research done by the federal government on the pros and cons. It's kind of been this, I'll say farce of a process. And I think there are some things about this plant that we likely don't know, and we owe it to ourselves to explore that and understand that in a true, objective, and scientific manner. I think that many of us who have experienced the plant and its effects recognize that there are upsides. And I think that with anything, you can experience a form of psychological addiction. There are real elements to that, but I don't have significant concern. But I do think that it's worth exploring the potential for concerns.
I appreciate that. I think me as a civilian in the cannabis community, I would say one of my biggest concerns is in terms of the legalization process of the federal government and them overtaxing, where I think the education process might not be there, where you see a MORE Act, they're looking at a 5% tax that will mature into an 8% tax. And then you're looking at the Chuck Schumer bill that he wants to throw a 25% tax.
Right.
And then it turns into the danger side of, I think people will start going back to the illicit market and have untested cannabis that they're consuming. And, you know, especially with the fentanyl scare and things that are going on, those are some of my biggest concerns, that we might tax this thing out of the market.
Yes, and I share that concern wholeheartedly. You start to look at the breakdown in some of these tax structures, and you're looking at somewhere between 65 and 85% tax if you were to go through the Schumer process, and you start to look at how these tax schemes scale and are tiered. My fear, I guess, getting more to the administrative and bureaucratic side of it, is that we see something very similar or a continuation of what we've experienced in California, which it almost seems as though it's a regulatory program designed to remove small business. And this could be a scenario where that process, and arguably Camp 2.0 is continued in a more economic way rather than a law enforcement way. My concern is that we see a scenario where many of the regulations are written in such a way that only major corporations have the ability to meet the economies of scale necessary to identify profits in your operations. Do we have distributors that are large enough to go through the permitting process in multiple states, do multi-state operation, maintain compliance? And what is the tax payments process? Some of the bills address that it needs to be a wire transfer directly to the Federal Reserve. But this, I am afraid, has the potential to create a small business eradication process. So yeah, I'm with you on that.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Back to you, Etienne.
Chris, I kind of glossed over a question initially, sure. And I wanted to follow up since you were discussing each of those bills. So what would you do differently from the MORE Act, Mace's Act, Schumer's Act? You just touched on taxation. Yeah. So what would you look at would be since you have been in the industry yourself, what would you see as a reasonable tax? And then of those three existing bills, what would you do differently?
Thank you for that one. I think if you look at some of the kind of preamble to several of the bills, the pieces of legislation that we're discussing this evening, they talk about the impact that has taken place inside certain communities inside the United States, and so far as the drug war. And so arguably what we've had is 80 years of government activity directly running counter to what we now have seen through the democratic process demonstrate the will of the people. So we've now seen that 90% of Americans approve of the use of cannabis in some form or another. What these bills also represent is an acknowledgement by the federal government via the current Congress that the United States position on cannabis was wrong. So the US government is the guilty party. The cannabis industry is the prevailing party. I find it odd and a little confusing as to why the prevailing party, the cannabis industry, would be on the hook to pay taxes to conduct a commercial activity in which they have articulated for 80 years is in fact a legitimate and appropriate commercial activity, that we would then be taxed by the federal government to do something that they have spent, according to some of these bills, somewhere to the tune of about $3.8 billion a year over the last 80 years to counter. So why is it that the prevailing party is going to pay taxes to the guilty party so that the prevailing party can conduct the activities that has now been proven to be legitimate? So all of that to say, why again are we paying taxes? Why would the cannabis industry pay taxes on the front end before it really even has a chance to get its feet under it? What we have seen demonstrated in California, the fifth largest economy in the world, an economy that doesn't have any shortage of consumers, producers, transporters, et cetera. So it's a full-fledged economy. And that regulatory structure that existed has demonstrated that regulatory structure was written in a way, whether intently or not, that was insufficient to create profit for the operators. And part of the reason for that is because the regulations and the taxation started at 100%, in effect at 100% from the day one. So normally, as you watch the progression of a industry, the industry starts, it gets its legs under it, then the government becomes involved, they start to introduce certain regulations. Regulations kind of grow with the growth of the respective economy or respective sector. And then there's a growth in taxation. California, as an example, did not start with the opportunity for licensed, legitimate cannabis operators to actually conduct themselves in a way where they could be profitable. And if we do the same thing where we start with a full-fledged a full-fledged regulatory environment at the federal level, my fear is that the obstacles and the friction to commerce are going to be so great that the cannabis companies can't overcome that. So why is it, again, that we would have taxes that are then going to be used to pay back the people who were negatively impacted by what has now been deemed to be an illegitimate war on drugs? I don't understand how that makes sense. We, the aggrieved party and now prevailing party, are going to pay a tax, which they are going to then use to pay the other individuals that were also a part of the aggrieved and prevailing party. Why wouldn't it come from somewhere else? This is kind of one of those government magic scenarios where, yeah, we're going to let you do what you've already been doing, and then we're going to use your profits to then pay the people that we disproportionately impacted in a negative way. So all of that again to say, why would we pay taxes on the front end? I think we should start at a 0% tax or a 0.5% tax to make sure that we get off the ground first. And I feel, again, California is the business case to prove the necessity for that. So I hope that answers the question.
No, it's very helpful and gives us an idea, I guess, again, as we're looking to where we stand. I would like to introduce Council Member Al Byrne. He has a follow-up question for you. I have a feeling it's about research.
Hey, Chris, very interesting conversation.
Thank you, Al.
I really like your economic theory take. Makes a lot of sense, especially the taxation issue. Yeah, I consider the plant a plant. It grows in the ground. These guys have heard this. They're boring them, but we don't tax the corn that's growing. We don't tax the soybean that's growing. We don't tax any of that stuff. We only tax it at the end of the cycle. And here we've decided that this particular plant, at least in the minds of the politicians, the lawmakers, is that it's not a plant, it's a drug.
Right.
So there's a conflict there. Now I'm the old guy here that they send up to do all the nasty shit. Okay, they put me up there and they say, Al. So this is not a criticism by any means, but it's sort of look at it as you came here with a bunch of really experts, and we are. And I just want to add something to your conversation about research. You were absolutely correct about your evaluation of U.S. research. However, the term I like is that that's a very ethnocentric evaluation of the research, meaning the research you are referencing is United States research, which is paltry. It's good. There's not enough, et cetera. You are correct. However, what I would like to say to you, and I would wish that you would think about putting this in your verbal repertoire, is that throughout the world, cannabis is in the pharmacopoeia of at least 27 countries, big deal countries, very sophisticated healthcare systems. The cannabis drugs that are created, for instance, in Great Britain, called Sativex is the brand name, is distributed throughout the entire European continent by Merck, the fourth largest pharmaceutical company in the world. So what I'm saying is, when you get into the research discussion, I would urge you to broaden that discussion as I just have, to counter the rhetoric that is normalized here that we don't have enough research. We do. We do. In the world, there's plenty of it. And I will be happy at your convenience to help you identify all this stuff and give you copies of it.
Excellent.
But that's something I hope you will take from my little interview here with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is illuminating. So, and I agree wholeheartedly with that I think reconfiguration of perspective for me. So thank you for that.
Yes, and Chris, thank you for talking about taxation that way. I was the test case for taxation for the state of California back in the day because I also own and operate the oldest dispensary in the United States, continuously operating. So we were railed by the tax department because they wanted to go after everybody else. And I had the former head of back then the BOE, not BOE, the taxation board, and basically he was my lead counsel, and in the end they just told me, you're gonna shut up and take a dive because we want access to that tax money. So you know, I think exactly what you stated is a real thing that people have to understand, that California is currently should be looked at as a test scenario of how not to be in that resolve with taxation, whereas we're seeing Oklahoma do just the opposite and seeing their industry flourish the way that we were anticipating California to be, but that
Right.
we have yet to realize. So thank you for bringing that up. Next up is Council Member George Armstrong, and he has a question for you, Chris.
All right.
Hi, Chris. First of all, I want to thank you for being here with the council. I'd like to thank you for your continued service, for choosing to run for Congress. I think that your experience in the enlisted corps and the officers corps and your experience in international theaters will bring a unique perspective to Congress if you get there. But regardless of whether you do or don't, I'd like to commend you on continuing to serve your community. I think that you would serve us well. And then, so that's the good part. Now I'd like to ask my question. Right now, veterans exist under an unfair VHA policy in VA hospitals that spans across both legal and illegal states on safe access to medical cannabis. And veterans are at the mercy of these state laws. What would you do to rectify the problem of medical treatment by zip code and bring that issue to light in Congress?
Thank you. To me, it's kind of hard to see this as on why this is even a problem at this point. We're in 2022. We're already delving into several other, I don't like calling it treatment solutions or treatment regimes, but we're looking at other things such as MDMA and psilocybin, even a few others that I think are showing great promise. So to me, it's almost anachronistic that we're still sitting here talking about whether or not we could access cannabis for veterans. And, kind of touching on what Al talked about earlier is we're not looking at the total spectrum of solutions. And we're kind of limited in I'm going to steal your word, Al, but ethnocentric frame of mind. in my last few years, I began to recognize the value of some of these other approaches, not only through the different components or compounds, but just a new approach to life as well, that I don't think was really discussed in our military service, and how to kind of in real life hunt the good stuff, as the term goes in the military. But we need to do a complete overhaul, in my eyes, of the VA. There's this very large bureaucracy, which I think is really one of the most dangerous elements for veterans. I know there are a lot of great practitioners and people who do amazing things every day for veterans inside of that organization. But it also strikes me as one of the largest bureaucracies that fail to address many of the real needs of veterans today. I've met with several of my soldiers or Marines that I served with, sailors, and I remember meeting one of them. He was a high-speed, low-drag guy, was with the Ranger Regiment, did a few tours, really did some things. And when I knew him, he was a staff sergeant, hard charger, moving fast, and I loved everything about him. I met him, I want to say, I think he got out in 14. I ran into him in 17, and he was a shell. He was on more drugs than he knew, coming all out of the VA. And that really was a punch in the gut to see that. And so, I talked to him, I asked him what was going on. I asked what his solutions were, from the doctors, and he was on everything they told him to be on. And, that was I almost call it damaging experience for me, just seeing how bad that can really get for people. And I talked to him about cannabis. I don't have any medical experience, but I talked to him about it, and he called me about a year later, and he was alive again. And, he talked to me about how close he was to doing certain things. And, I don't think that it was it's not a simple story, but I think he did a lot of personal growth in the time. But I think that veterans need to step up. I think we need to take another look at how it is that we exist inside of the American political system. I think we need to look at how it is that we present ourselves to Congress. I know there's a lot of great military and veteran organizations that are doing many good things in Congress, but we also, I think, are getting to a place where we're watching too many of us, get off the battlefield for no good reason. They talk about how 22 kill themselves every day, but I think that number is far higher. I've seen studies that show it's closer to 35%. And sadly, I think 35 per day. And I think that number is closer to reality, but I don't think that number is even correct. And, for some reason that you're not supposed to talk about that, but I missed that memo. And, I think we're seeing really that we need to, both as Americans, as veterans, as people who have sworn themselves to the Constitution, we need to re-engage ourselves in the dialogue and the discourse of America. And we need to make sure that we are representing ourselves appropriately. I mean, you look back at Congress 120 years ago, the overwhelming majority of Congress were veterans. I think it was 90-something% of all members of Congress, regardless of party, were veterans. You look at it today, and it's the exact inverse of that. It's 10-12%, and maybe it's correlation and causation, but I think part of what we are failing to do is take care of ourselves. And I want to step in, be a part of that loud and aggressive conversation to address it. And I don't believe that there should be some sort of zip code restrictions. I think if you're a veteran, many other things that I think, but one, I think if you are inside of the care of the VA, you should have access to cannabis. I think cannabis should be a covered medicine. I think that it should be a medicine provided to you wherever you are in your state. whatever state you're in, because it's federally administered medicine. But that would be one of my major priorities, making sure that veterans get direct access to cannabis, regardless of their location. So I hope that answered the question, but I'm happy to further.
Yeah, so real quick follow-up. I want to touch on a few things. First of all, we are happy to talk about those 22 a day, and those we lost on the battlefield and back home. Speaking to them keeps their memory alive. So I'm glad you brought up the soldier that was struggling. And then kind of back to what Al was saying about educating you, I'm going to stand up for the VA in this current situation. One of our council members got them change their policy back in 2010. It did take them 12 years to actually put out that video that OPSEC video that came out a few weeks ago explaining that. But that's explaining the policy that I asked a question about. So we still have 13 states that have no medical programs. If you're a 100% disabled veteran and you live in one of those states, you don't have access to it. And the VA is restricted on their policies by what the federal government does, right? So, and honestly, this falls squarely at the feet of Congress, and that's the only place that it can be fixed. And the real only fix is to reschedule it to schedule, at least down to like Schedule 4, so it's a major lift. But I just wanted to give you the cheat answer to that question, because it really is. You can't put it at the feet of the VA. They're doing everything they can. They can't offer those people in those 13 states to break the federal law. They're a federal organization, So, so I just want to add that, please, Chris.
Okay, and then I wanted to clarify. You said that 13 states don't have access to VA services.
No, to medical cannabis access because of the laws. We've got medical cannabis laws in 37 states. So therefore, they can talk to their VA, and their concern is those people who are in those 13 states who need access and don't have access. So
got it. Okay, thanks for the clarification. I was not aware of that.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
Are you looking to get your medical cannabis grow license? Limestone City Hydroponics can help patients through the process of obtaining their license to grow medical cannabis. What's that? You don't have a doctor? If you meet the medical criteria, Limestone City Hydroponics has a nurse practitioner who can assess and provide medical cannabis prescriptions. What are you waiting for? Contact Limestone City Hydroponics at limestonecityhydroponics.ca or call them at 613-548-0420.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Cannabis Cannabis edibles are an effective way to manage pain and other ailments, especially when you deal with your trusted partner, Legacy 420, in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. You see, we lab test every product on site to ensure proper dosage every time, which is critical when consuming cannabis edibles. All Legacy 420 edibles are made by our classically trained baker and chocolatier, and we also have super tasty vegan options.
Our baker has been in the industry for 25 years. She's also a chocolatier. Everything from savory to sweet, your chocolate bars, brownies, butter tarts, you name it, we make it.
Talk to our knowledgeable Cannatex about our incredible variety available. Give your trusted partners a call. Legacy 420 out on your road.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
So that's the frustration that we follow, in the sense that why we're organizing. We came together as a group over as a buddy check, just checking in on each other as veterans, and then we realized how powerful we were together. And I do hope that you are successful in your run, because we're hopefully going to have a lobby day next year. We were hoping to have one this year, but it wasn't able to due to COVID. And so in May of next year, NCIA, National Cannabis Industry Association, will have its lobby day, and we'll be down there. And so hopefully you'll be able to come on down and shake our hands and come take some pictures with us in the day.
Hope to invite you in.
Councilmember Byrne, you've got a follow-up.
No problem. Chris, I saw you taking notes.
Yes.
And there are 37 states that have legal cannabis, and veterans can use medical cannabis in their protocol, and 13 that don't. However, all the territories also agree that they can use medical cannabis. So if we got vets in the Virgin Islands or Guam or something, they are also allowed to use cannabis. It's just, way back places like South Dakota and Kansas, they haven't got the message yet.
Got it.
Yep, and we need to bring our brothers and sisters into the fold somehow, some way. We have another question. This is going to come from Councilmember Michael Crowitz. Michael Crowitz, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dan. So this question, I think, goes to a little bit of hopefully your vision of how you'll work in office, hopefully becoming elected on legislative cannabis information. And I want to kind of rewrite the question a little bit here, but the same essence. But the thing is that we kind of have a pretty good understanding of how a couple of things work. Like, we work a lot of times with vets that are working with constituent services. That's very straightforward. Communications, between the Congressional Research Services and all that are very straightforward. But there's a little bit of a mystery to us. I think just certain things fall through the cracks. And we've been working as a Veterans Action Council on an international level. And international cannabis, it definitely intersects our national law, our Controlled Substances Act, but it does it in somewhat of an abstract way, meaning that it doesn't come up in your average conversations about federal legislation. And when we go to a legislative office and we work with the staff and we talk to the various staff members, we found ourselves sort of dead ending a lot. And just wondering, like, how you see yourself coordinating with stakeholders. How do you see yourself making sure that you interact with those who are the experts in these fields? I guess the bottom line for us is there's a lot of echo chamber stuff going on at the federal level in Congress. And how do you see yourself, let's say you're working on a congressional hearing, how would you make sure you had the right people in the seats that actually represent the people in the field, not those that are just the biggest voice or the one that promotes themselves the loudest?
Yeah. One of the, I guess, most important elements to doing that true conversation is that I've been able to run a cannabis company. I've been in the cannabis industry. So I've seen it firsthand. I've experienced the law, the legislation at the state levels, at the city levels, at the county levels. So I have the firsthand knowledge when it comes to how does this policy manifest itself into operations? How does this policy really end up playing out either for the benefit or the detriment of licensed cannabis operators. And so there's a little bit of experience that I have that most congressional members don't. Is that firsthand, small business owner, cannabis business owner, et cetera. And so I've been there. I've stood in the Capitol, state of California Capitol, with the people who are really pushing the needle. I've worked with a lot of the nonprofits that are on the ground, the trade associations that really got a lot of things to move. And so I've been able to meet the people or at least many people who I believe are the kind of, at this point, the silent movers that don't have the millions of dollars and the big names and stuff like that, and these silent movers, you're not going to know them if you're just random congressperson who is waiting for an expert to be put in front of you. So I guess my point is, I get firsthand experience. I've worked with many of the people, at least at the California level, and I reference California, one, because it's my firsthand experience, but two, it's the closest example of regulatory environment at a, call it relatively national scale, that allows me access to people and knowledge of the existence of people who are really informed on this. The Humboldt County Growers Association is a phenomenal organization. They've had some great leadership. I sat with the California Growers Association back in 16, 17, when they were doing some great things, co-founded the Cannabis Distribution Association, which has worked on a lot of the both California distribution related policies, and also helped address several pieces of legislation in other states. One of the things that the Cannabis Distribution Association was able to facilitate in the very front end of California's legislation is when 64 went into effect, distributors were not allowed to transfer to other distributors. So you had to, as a distributor, pick up your goods from the producer, and only that one distribution warehouse could move it to its final destination. Because if you look at the way the law is written, when you have a distribution center in another location, it's actually a different license. So the technical interpretation of California law would say that you were not allowed to move as a distributor that owned two warehouses. You couldn't move from warehouse A to warehouse B because this was a different distribution license. And so we were able to solve that problem pretty quickly. And those are the things that I was able to watch and see play out on the front end. So kind of a long way to answer your question. I have a lot of firsthand knowledge. And I think within that network, those people will know the real answers, because many of the lobbyists on Capitol Hill are just doing a great job getting paid. I'll leave it at that.
I just had a quick follow-up, if you don't mind. And I appreciate that answer. It's hopeful that you would be able to take that role of someone in Congress who has some actual on the ground experience to bring to the process. I think that will be very helpful. But this is actually completely just out of my curiosity, but how would you see yourself? I mean, first of all, I guess, do you see yourself championing and working on things that are outside of your expertise, outside of your general comfort zone, as you come across them because constituents bring them to you, or other members of Congress bring them to you, or in the course of regular activities, do you see yourself putting forward things that again would be outside of your general immediate expertise, and how would you handle that? I mean, how it just it strikes me there's sort of that little bit of area I just can't quite get my brain around how those things would formulate in Congress. I guess what we wind up doing a lot of times is wind up having multiple conversations. So we'll wind up talking with the chief of staff, we'll wind up talking with the member themselves, and all these conversations have to be aggregated within our own team, our group, to try to figure out the overall conversation. So that's our side. so to speak, from
piecing it together
from the advocate side. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've done, I've done that advocacy side. I was one of the first people inside of the license space to be pushing members of the state legislature in California to have conversations with us, and knocking on their doors and having them tell us no, and just walking the halls trying to get them to talk to us. And then eventually within the next 18 months, they were begging us to talk to them. I literally had legislators walk up to me and say, what bill can I write for cannabis? We were at a after party and they were like, Chris, you know what's going on here. Help me write a bill. And, I was like, 18 months ago, you wouldn't even let me in your office. And, so I've felt that pain. I've gone through that process. I've seen it, and I've seen it manifest or, pivot quickly. But to answer the bigger question that you had, I talk about cannabis because I have firsthand experience in it, but really what I'm focusing on and what I intend to focus on in Congress is small business. And I see cannabis inside of that. We need to have representation. At this moment, there's not anybody in Congress that has actual experience in the cannabis industry. There's nobody representing the cannabis industry. There are people writing bills, but there aren't people actually representing cannabis. And I'm running for the district that has the Emerald Triangle within it. I'm running in the district that has the oldest and longest producing cannabis region in America. Why is the person that represents the Emerald Triangle not the one writing and championing cannabis legislation? So I feel that should be a very natural nexus between the legislative effort and this district specifically. Separately, my other background, I did 16 years in the military. Part of that was enlisted. And then I went in as an officer and served as a infantry officer. One of the last assignments that I had, I was assigned to a Department of Defense think tank called the Senator Daniel K. Inouye Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies. And one of the things that I studied there was transnational issues and worked on global challenges, global economics, understanding environmental, military, geopolitical activities and how they interface across countries. And so given the situation that we have here in the world, not only with Ukraine and Russia, but also many of the issues and challenges that are headed our way with China that we're seemingly distracted from, those are also things that fit well within my level of expertise. So there's really two things and arguably three things that I'll focus on heavily. That is ensuring that the cannabis industry, that small business will have representation in Congress, that we can address the challenges inside of our economy and help grow the American economy back to what it should be. Separately, we also need somebody who can address the geopolitical issues, that understands what's happening on a geopolitical front, that understands what's happening with our monetary policy. Why are we experiencing significant inflation? Why are we experiencing substantial supply chain issues? I've worked in supply chain. I understand that. I understand many of the challenges to a degree greater than many of those in Congress. And then we need to make sure that we are taking full measure of our national defense. Those are some real issues that need to be addressed. And then lastly, we need to make sure that we're focusing on the future. And that means tying in education and making sure that we are preparing our economy for the 22nd century. And to that end, I would like to focus on developing a space economy. So there's many things that I feel fit within my expertise and cannabis is included in that. To kind of segue into the secondary part of your question is what will I do with many of those challenges, which are the responsibilities of Congress that don't fit within my expertise. And, having learned what leadership is from the very bottom, being an E-nothing, being responsible for my weapon, and that's it, to taking care of an organization of 200 people and leading that organization, or facilitating operations for an 1,100 person operation. nobody has all of the answers. Anybody that says they have all the answers is the last person you want to talk to. And part of what we learn in the military is how to crowdsource expertise. And that is exactly what I would continue to do. And there are a lot of things that, one of the things that I want to focus on, particularly for this district, is addressing forest management, firefighting, preparation, because kind of one of the major issues that we're facing in California is a 1,200-year drought. This is the worst drought we've had in 1,200 years. We need to address water storage. We need to address firefighting. We need to address water security. I understand those things at a high level for, national security, strategic security considerations, but I don't have any expertise on forest management. So it's knowing who those those members are with expertise, and then having the ability to very straightforward, because I think we're out of time to really play these political games that we've been playing for 40 years that landed us where we are today, where we just have compounding environmental and economic issues. So we need people who are keen leaders who know how to look at somebody who is there to offer support and say, you either have it or you don't have it. And if you don't have it, you need to go. And we need to find somebody who does have it. And, we play too many political games. And I think part of that is why we are where we are today in America. And to be fair, or to be frank, we're on a bad path. We are not on a good path in America. And I think it's because we're taking this too lightly. So to answer the question specifically, I'd find the experts. I'd find the people who know who those experts are. And I would very directly leverage their knowledge, because I think the real value of a congressman is the ability to put the people who know what they're doing in the right places and give them the authority and get out of their way, just like the government should do with business. Get out of the way.
Right on. Thank you. That was a good
Certainly.
response. Next up is our last question is Council Member Al Byrne.
With a question that's been answered, you have addressed essentially what my question was. The only thing that I would ask you to, in the world we have now, there seems to be a confusion between real medicine and one compound, say CBD. It's a compound of a big plant that has 300 compounds, and then we have the hemp issue, and then we have recreational cannabis, and somehow over my years it has been developed that we have these three tentacles of the plant, and I had a lot to do with them doing that. But now that it's been done, it's confusing to the average human being out there. And I wonder if you and the guys that you have worked with in the past as industry have discussed how to make this triumvirate have its own, each particle have its own talking points, if you will. Has that ever been really discussed within your experience in California or beyond?
And to make sure I understand it, you're saying delineating between hemp, CBD, and THC, or I want to make sure I understand the question fully.
And recreational as opposed to medical, as opposed to hemp. I mean, the press seems to just interface this like it's all the same, and of course it isn't.
Right.
And I was just wondering if the business community is even thinking about addressing this sort of dysfunction of conversation.
It's been my experience, and I'd be curious to get Brian's thoughts as well. But it's been my experience that no, there's not much. I mean, you have the people who understand the medical component of it, and they are well informed. But I think in the broader sense of those that are consumers of cannabis for whatever purpose, No, I don't think that there's really much of a delineation, at least here in California. I don't think that there's really an identification. I think Brian's company is doing a great job trying to articulate the existence and the value of the medical side of things. But by and large, the commercial market is largely focused on recreational consumption. Part of it is, I believe, largely because of the existential threat that exists for cannabis companies, period. And that is, I got to figure out how to survive. I have to figure out how to counter the unlicensed market who is eating my lunch and my dinner. And I remember my former company, this is 2018, and we were trying to start the conversation about terpenes vice potency. And that was a fool's errand. That was, I'm only now beginning to see, call it April of 2022. So 4 years later, I'm only now beginning to see conversations about terpene profiles. So my concern is that we are going to experience something like that when it comes to CBD, hemp-derived CBD, cannabis-derived CBD, medical versus recreational, with, I think, probably one exception, and that is inside of those communities that are more attuned to the value, the medicinal value of cannabis. And so I think what we'll possibly see is these kind of centers, these community centers that understand the value, the medicinal value, start to propagate that message outward. So I think the veteran community will be one of those centers. Maybe some of the other cultures that have a longer standing relationship with cannabis will also help propagate that information. But when it comes to the commercial market, unfortunately, I don't think, and I'm not going to argue that that's an empirical statement, but I don't think that there's much of a conversation at that level. I guess another caveat I would put to that answer, though, is the exploration that's being done with the compound level and how to address certain ailments. And, we're seeing a lot of really interesting work coming out of Canada right now in the psilocybin space. I think Bruce Lenton has done some great things to make sure that exploration continues. So I'm hoping that there's a level of collaboration, or at least mutual benefit, that happens in those, I guess, at this point, more advanced discussions. But yeah, sadly, I think for the consumer mindset, we're going to see commercial, recreational cannabis kind of lead that conversation in a general sense. But where I think we'll see the real meat of the conversation between government and certain communities will be the medical front.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Certainly.
So I'd like to remind everybody that Chris Coulombe is running for the California 2nd Congressional District. It encompasses the northern coast of the state. Basically, it goes from the Golden Gate Bridge all the way up to the Oregon border. It includes Highway 101 north of San Francisco, except for a stretch in Sonoma County. Consists of Marin, Mendocino, Humboldt, Del Norte, and Trinity counties, plus portions of Sonoma County. So, Chris, I'd like to thank you for joining us today, but I would like you to finish by telling us about why you're running and give us your platform. And to plug you real quick, for anybody who has any questions or would like to support Chris, please go to chris2congress.com to find out more and find ways how you can help Chris out. Go ahead, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We can see what's happening in the United States right now, and it's, I think, particularly poignant for veterans today, which is one of the reasons why I'm standing. Is we're watching partisan politics tear this country apart. We are steadily marching into what appears to be, according to all of the experts, pending environmental collapse, or at least substantial environmental degradation to a degree that apparently is irrecoverable. And their claim is that that's going to happen in the next 8 years or less. I think as we continue to watch what's happening on the international level and national level, we're watching a precipitous decline of the economic power of the United States. We're watching China rise exponentially. There's a PricewaterhouseCoopers study that predicts that in 2028, China will be the largest economy in the world. And that means that the United States will be number 2. And in principle, I don't have any issue with that, but I recognize the reality of having a new economic superpower controlling the world. And I don't know that I don't know that we're ready for that. I don't know that the world is ready for that reality. And I think that we need people in Congress who are well attuned to the international environment, to international organizations and and institutions and how they are supposed to prepare themselves or prevent certain actions in the world. As I look at what we're doing here nationally, it's apparent that we don't have vision in this country anymore at the national level. We used to have it. We used to be happy and motivated to work for the greater good so that we could accomplish amazing things on behalf of humanity. And we're not doing that now. Now it seems that we're stuck in a quarterly cycle where we're just pushing to make sure that we meet profit expectations. And we do that on a continual hamster wheel. And that's not what we're here to do. That's not what humans are here to do. It's not what Americans are here for. We're here to press the opportunities of humanity beyond what we think is possible. I think one of the last times that the United States had vision was with JFK when he wanted to send us to the moon. And I think that we lost that along the way. I think, I'm glad that we have someone like Elon Musk that is taking up the mantle, rightly or wrongly. It doesn't matter. We're advancing humanity. And I think that we need more people that are ready to show vision, that are ready to identify what the vision is and to take this country to the next frontier. And we're not even talking about the 22nd century. We're talking about hoping to make it through the end of this year. And we're having real conversations about nuclear war. We're talking about famine now. Our president is talking about how we need to be ready to experience famine and food shortages. That's not America. America is the one that's solving those problems. America is the one that's figuring out how we make sure that countries have the food that they need to have to survive. And so I don't see that leadership happening. And so I think as someone who swore an oath to the Constitution, I took that oath to heart. I made that oath 3 times, twice in a time of war. And I've never felt like I removed myself from the obligations of that oath. And so for me, it's a duty and an obligation to stand up when you see that your country is not headed in the right path and do something to make that path the right path. And so that's why I'm standing. And I believe that there is a large portion of this population. I would argue it's probably upwards of 80% of the population that agrees with me, that is of the same opinion and does not agree with the path that we are on, whether they're a Democrat or a Republican. We can see that these politicians, these career politicians, do not have our best interests in heart. And we need to, as the people, stand up, and we need to make sure that our interests are represented. And that's our responsibility as citizens of a republic, because we're not a democracy, we are a republic. And our obligation is to the republic. And so if we do not protect that, if we do not make sure that our children understand the definition of liberty, then we are failing, because if you don't know how to define something, then you will never know you lost it. And that is not a future in which I can accept. So I am standing, and I'm hoping that I will have others that will stand with me. And I understand it's an uphill battle, but thankfully I've been in a fight before, and I've got some training from the Marine Corps, from the Army. You know, no hill for a climber, as they say.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. As we always say, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, and thank you for doing your part and being vigilant and speaking up for the American people, and we wish you luck and success, and we look forward to following your journey. So come back and let us know how things are going. I would like to thank our council members, Michael Crowitz, Brian Buckley, Al Byrne, and the George Armstrong, Michael Crowitz, myself, Etienne Fontaine, and of course our special guest, Chris Coulombe. This has been the V.A.C. Roundtable number 34, from Cannabis to Congress. So it's good to see one of our own out there giving a shot at it, and hopefully it inspires some more of you to run in your neck of the woods to make our Congress a better and brighter place. And thank you, Chris, for taking the time to share your thoughts and ideas. You seem like a man for the job, and we wish you success on your journey.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for your time this evening and your insightful questions.
All righty. Y'all have a great night. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Y'all have a great night.
The Veterans Action Council is a Pace Radio Network content provider.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partners 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.